The one finger shove. The
guy that's turning it up another level this year, Chad Fortune and the power forwards.
Chad Fortune and Superman.
Save it, baby,
Yeah.
save it. Hit the gas,
Hit the gas.
There it is.
And it's Chad Fortune now and Captain America.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Do It Boys, episode number 2, here in the secret lair of the one and only Chad Fortune. Chad, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming to my, my bat cave? Or is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
Added a special entrance and a good amount of parking.
That's right.
And we got a great episode here today, a second ever episode, and excited to be here for you to be our guest. The first one we had Joe Foley, a new driver for Team Scream, and now we get to have you that drove in the industry for many years.
The old driver.
The old days.
New against the old. Let's see how I fare in this venture, right? Okay.
Chad Fortune, what is your favorite food?
I mean, that might be the most difficult one.
I know.
I would say sushi.
Really?
I've always been healthy anyway, so... but I can't stay away from the junk food. So
I know.
When you're busy and you're running around trying to get to a pit party or something like this, you're always trying to grab some kind of chocolate bar to keep you held over while you're chained to the truck and signing autographs and seeing all our fans.
I had to make it a funny question to start off because my favorite's pizza. Everybody knows I'm the pizza man. TJ loves pizza. So I had to see, Chad.
Not very original.
Okay. I know. It's New York style.
All right.
So you did many years in the industry as a monster truck driver, but what are your roots starting off? Because I know you couldn't just go straight into the monster truck seat. What was it like starting off in your early years?
Well, geez, who'd have thought? I never would have thought or pictured that I was going to be driving a monster truck for as long as I did in the first place. I was a sportsman, right? I grew up in Indiana. We played football, basketball, baseball, according to the seasons, whatever happened. So that's what we did. Out in the backyards, neighborhoods were just full. If it was springtime, we were playing baseball. Wintertime, we were playing basketball. And then football, of course, is year-round and just killing each other.
Of course.
So those were my loves. And then living in Indiana also, I had motorbikes and go-karts and stuff like this. So there's a place called the Pits. It was just an old abandoned field that we did trails, and so we were always out there making dust.
That's cool.
A dust storm. So it was really cool. It was what you would think of living in Indiana, just wide open spaces and hell raising, really.
That's good.
Yeah.
I remember I had the pleasure to go to Evansville, Indiana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the location.
Sure. It's further south.
Yep, they have that great independent show there. It's a 12-truck show of Creedence and everybody. Yeah. So Indiana's cool. I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
TJ, what's your next question? What we got?
So, out of all the trucks you've driven, and I call you the superhero guy because you're always driving a superhero truck.
Right.
Whether it's, Superman, the Captain America, always famous for the shield.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Loved seeing on top of the truck. The poses. You always had the coolest poses.
Well, being a hero. And that's another thing, right? Who, if you're going to drive a monster truck, that's one thing, but also being a superhero truck. So you have got to play it up the best you could. And that's what I wanted to do too, is have fun with it and have fun with the fans and be interactive. So regardless of what was going out on that course, you have good luck, bad luck, the racing doesn't go so well. Freestyle is always fun, but I wanted to end it at freestyle on the biggest pile of crap out there.
Yeah.
And in those days when, we did interviews and we were able to get out of the truck and we did stuff. So, and not always was it the safest place to be doing it, but the adrenaline's rushing and you got 65,000 people and the truck ends up smoking on top of this big pile. I got to get out.
Oh, absolutely.
You get out and you look at the crowd and you put the pose together as Superman, and it just erupts. And it was at times I felt like it was goofy, but the crowd being so into it and the adrenaline rush, your heart's already pounding, you're fearless. You get out on this thing and you're standing 20 foot tall. And then afterwards, you get the rush of that. Now that you have to get down. So
Yeah.
you
back
got
in
the
truck.
crew guys, you got the tech officials. They're all waving at you, trying to get you down, and the wrecking, the telehandlers coming out to try and keep the truck steady and lower me down. I mean, I wouldn't have done it any different if they couldn't have pulled me off of that, because I just had to hit the pose at the right time.
That's awesome. And it's a good thing you pointed that out, because my friend just made a video recently, Monster Talk, about the characters of monster trucks in general and how there were so many different personalities in the industry. And he was describing how you were one of those, because no matter what superhero truck you're with, even with Soldier of Fortune and all of these other ones, you took on that charactership and you went out there, you put on the poses, and you got all the fans on the feet.
Well, and it was so fun. And motorsports is fun in general, right? Everybody likes the horsepower, but I wanted to play to the whole realm, the motor heads, but also the kids, the fantasy. You got this big monster truck, 1,500 horsepower, 10 foot tall. You're riding on the back of a dragon, right, over a dinosaur. So why not play that out a little bit more and live the character? Now, of course, I got to play the heroes. And,
Not too bad.
It's not difficult to do that, right, if you can pull it off. But it was just having fun, and I had fun with the crowd as well, and with the autographs, and you guys when you were kids coming up and requesting these things. What are you gonna do? Let's do this, before the backflips, before all the tricks that they're doing. I was playing around with as a character. It was great fun for me.
Yeah, I remember one more thing about this is that in 2011, I went to my first ever monster truck show in Tampa, Florida, and it was downpouring, raining, muddy, awful. And my mom was not a monster truck fan at the time. And my friend brought me for his birthday. So we came to the show. We go to the pit party. We know nothing about it. And the first thing my mother sees, Superman! Oh my gosh! And she cuts the line. She doesn't know there's a line. She drops the pocketbook. She drops her glasses and everything. And she gives you a big hug.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's Superman.
Yeah.
As a little kid, I really believed it. So that's just saying a lot about how much of a character you were to all the kids and all the adults even.
Well, again, I appreciate that. This is the stories that I like to hear. And I felt like I owed that to the crowd, and not just be a racer, not just be trying to do freestyle. Although maybe I wasn't all that great as those, but I tried to do the best in all three, and then play it up too with trying to be Superman, right? I mean, if you're going to be a driver in a monster truck, you're faster than a speeding bullet. You're stronger than anything. I mean, you feel the adrenaline. So I certainly did believe it at the time when you're on the truck, because you make that thing jump and a 10,000-pound machine fly through the air.
Yeah, 30,
You're
40
pretty
feet.
close to it.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So
There's nothing like it.
yeah, it was great fun.
That's good. I'd love to talk about your wrestling background, and that's what eventually led up into you getting into monster trucks.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, so we're working backwards. So my careers, right? So if we're going to work backwards, monster trucks, I came from wrestling and I came from playing football and sports. Going backwards, spending some time at WCW and WWF, I had to learn to be a character. It's one thing to be a tough guy, but also to be a guy that can, have the emotions and work with the crowd. And,
Right.
coming from football, you're a tough guy, one-on-one competition, and you don't show pain. So going into wrestling, what was I going to do to have somebody punch me in the face and me act like it hurts? Well,
Yeah.
that didn't work out for a while, and actually for a couple of years, until I realized that the emotion of the crowd, an old time wrestler told me one time is that we're in the business of emotion, right? You want to play with the crowds to make them like you, love you, hate you,
Right.
sympathy, all that kind of thing. And when I did that, when I recognized that, everything was wide open. It made it more fun, right? You played these characters and you played out there, and the emotions in the crowd really makes it, part of being in a movie, right? That's why
Right.
you go. You want to feel all this stuff, and when you're in front of a crowd, they're paying a fee to come in. They want some entertainment as well. This is what enhanced me when I got into the monster trucks and playing characters, or at least exaggerating the characters
Right.
in trucks. It wasn't just about driving. If you and I want to go racing in the backyard, we can do that all day long, but nobody wants to buy that, right? Buy a
No.
ticket to that. Unless there's some interest.
They want to
right?
see some type of drama or
Yeah.
some type
Yeah.
of story.
I think so.
Character.
I mean, that's the way I
no,
took
I
it.
agree. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Way back when I was playing football, no way. It was just hardcore. Me against you, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to make touchdowns, and that's the way it is. I had to learn that, go through this kind of thing through wrestling. And again, who'd have thought? I didn't think that I was going to be a pro wrestler. What I wanted to do
Right.
was
As a
play
kid, you never thought,
I wanted to play sports. I wanted to play football.
you wanted to be a professional athlete for football.
Yeah.
And then it leads to wrestling,
Yeah.
and it leads to driving a monster truck for many years. I mean,
And I got to learn from the best, as a wrestler too. Blackjack Mulligan, Dusty Rhodes, some of these old school guys that if they were they had to be good if they were gonna make money, because they would be on the road, and it was a hard road, so they had to have the whole charisma and everything going. So I learned
Right.
from these guys, and again, it's done me okay for even monster trucks.
that's good. So you
Yeah.
had great idols, and it sounds like an incredible way to lead from football to wrestling to monster trucks. I would never think that as a kid. I'd be like, I hope to be that monster truck driver one day.
Well,
And then
I
it
just
happens.
wasn't very good at anything. I just kept losing jobs and had to find a new job.
Oh, man.
No, I was just very fortunate. That's just way lucky, and was able to just have that kind of.
Very blessed.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's good.
So, Wayne, do you remember what truck he first drove?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Do you actually know?
Not off the top of my head.
If I have to remember, the first truck that I remember, it had basketball for wheels. It had the thing in it. Do you remember what it was called? Come on, Wayne, you should know this by now.
Why are you roasting me on this podcast? What's going on here?
Well, let me help you out. What you're talking about is Power Forward. It was a Karl Malone truck, sponsored by Karl Malone, basketball player for the Utah Jazz. But that wasn't my first truck.
That's the first one I remember. Though.
Well, yeah, you guys were just babies back in those days. The first truck was Nitro Machine.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cool one.
And it was really because it was the only truck I could fit in at the time. It was Gravedigger 4, I think. Now, some hardcore fans would say it's maybe a different old Gravedigger, but it was what I thought it was Gravedigger 4. It was a wheelie machine, so you could hit, good for arenas, you could hit the Van Stack and just
man.
do a wheelie all across the floor. And that was a lot of fun. It was my very first experience. Now, in those days, we never practiced. You
Right.
got in the truck, and if
You
you're
went
gonna-
out
That
there.
was your practice.
Yeah.
You tore it up.
yeah, if you're gonna do damage, that's what it was. If you're gonna do damage, you might as well do it in front of 16,000
Yeah, why
pounds
not?
or somebody.
They'll be screaming.
Yeah. So out of all these years that I've actually been driving, 20 years, you only have 3 or 4 minutes of driving time
In a whole show.
on a whole show. So some of these guys that are driving now, they get that in one weekend, driving down at Tom's place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For more than 20 years of what I've been doing in trucks all this time. So
So did you ever get practice? Did you ever actually go to something like that?
I had my tryout practice in Kill Devil Hills with Dennis Anderson, where he tried to basically break my neck with these jumps that were 8 foot, hit the back side of these things and basically just saying floor it and hit it as hard as you can.
That's good
And
training.
Again, they didn't have Hans devices back then. They had these donuts that in the first hit it'd fly out, so then you had nothing.
Oh,
And I
man.
had a long noodle neck, so I had a lot of whiplash going on. But that was my first basically just introduction. And then the next time I was actually in the truck riding around. I think it was in Houston, doing a Chicago style or something like that.
Right.
And then never since. And then, later in my career, I think it was in 2017 or something like that, I went to Tom's and I got, a couple laps of practice where I actually got to mess around. We got to mess around with shocks.
Oh, okay.
So wait. So you went out in 17?
I don't even know if it was 17.
Okay.
It was one of the times when they were doing the school. They had the school out there. And I literally asked, can I go and feel out some of these shocks? I know I was driving Captain America at the time. So
Because if you drove out there in 17, we drove out there in 15.
okay.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that.
So yeah, but that was my first. It was
First real practice for
Yeah.
racing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
for
crazy.
anything, for
Right,
doing
yeah.
stuff for freestyle too, because
Wow.
he had a whole track.
So before that, did you ever adjust shocks or anything, or you just left it?
Well, you did, but there was
couldn't test
in the
the
early
track.
days. You'd have somebody with a wrench that would just do a twist, and then they came
Yep.
up with a $10 part, the valve, and you could adjust it that way. I didn't know a whole lot of stuff, and nobody
Right.
drove my trucks because me being 6'6", nobody else is going to jump in my truck and say, "Hey, this is landing really bad."
Yeah.
I just had to live with it and had a stiff neck for about 20 years.
Wow.
But again, the adrenaline rushing and just is what it is.
Yeah, you won't feel it until a day later,
Yeah.
and then you're like,
And I
Oh,
got,
man.
yeah, I got good at it. I mean, there's a lot of testing that we did, on the fly. But those are game scenarios. You're just doing it in between, whatever to see what works.
And of course, what happened last week isn't going to hold up the next week.
Yeah, every place is different. And again, I keep referring back to the old days before they start doing all the tracks the same. We'd go to these stadium events and go, what the hell is this? And you go to Dennis Anderson and I go, well, how are you going to hit this? He goes, I don't know. I've never done this. I was going to ask you the same question. So if he hasn't hit one of these buses or dump trucks or airplanes or rock piles or anything like that, it was challenging for everybody out there. We're just going, what the heck is happening?
should we do that? Is it worth it?
Yeah, we used to make fun of some of the dirt crew with them not knowing what their measuring tape
Yeah,
was,
uh-huh.
and thinking that this is 4 foot right here. This is only 4 foot, and it's really 2. And they're thinking they're making a 10-foot ramp, and it's really 20, and it's shooting you up crazy and blowing tires off.
It was just go for it back then.
Yeah, it really was, and it was whatever. And then the next week it'd be different. Something else would come around, and we'd just be like, I don't know what to do here. Let's see.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was fun. I mean, again, it was such a challenge.
I
to
can imagine.
us. It was a challenge to us to see what was going on, and good drivers could figure it out,
That's awesome.
or they would just hit it, full blast and
Yeah.
say, "This will be great.
Nail it.
Lands.
It'll be a
Nail
good
it.
highlight." Yeah.
I remember back in the early days of the World Finals, someone did that off the rock pile, and they got 25 feet, which is what the normal standard now. But back then,
Yeah.
the announcers were like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
It broke off a whole tire and everything. But he went for it. I'll put in the clip. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't remember offhand.
Yeah, there's so many things. Lupe Sosa, right, in the World Finals, just hitting the rock pot or hitting the container. No, it was a tractor trailer that was stuffed in it, and getting caught.
Right.
But there wasn't enough time to pull him off, and then somebody else comes out and just runs through him almost to get across it.
Yeah.
But it makes for great highlights if it
Absolutely.
works out,
If it
right?
worked out.
That's what the World Finals was all about too, right? Is,
Right.
who could survive it, and then all of a sudden they're the world champion.
Yeah, and I think the earliest days were when the biggest rivalries were going on. I mean, Dennis Anderson and Tom Meents.
Oh, yeah.
If you remember that World Finals, that after for the encore, they just kept taking out truck after truck, and going ham on each other and just destroying each other.
Some of this stuff was just amazing, and the World Finals would kick off what the next year was going to look like, right? New obstacles. They test out these obstacles and what looked good and what didn't look good, and then the rivalries of trying to do. Dennis and Tom trying to outdo each other,
Right.
and everybody else trying to hang on to dear life, and get into the top 3, 4, 5 spots, or hang on and sit in the seat for a while. But again, it was challenging, and us as drivers, it was too, and the crew as well. Those World Finals weeks were like. Of course we love the fans. We love being around all the people, but it was tough on all of us. Signing autographs for, 5 hours at a time, and then going out there and then, go to practice and qualifying and the pressure.
And sign autographs till 2, 3 in the morning.
And then, then you got to do that and then get up and do the same thing again. But everybody, it felt like everybody, including the fans, were all a part of it.
Yeah.
Right? You guys were there. You're being
Absolutely.
dragged around. You guys were,
Oh,
wetting your diapers and being dragged around in that Las Vegas heat.
Forgetting ponchos at wet events when you're not at World Finals.
Yeah.
Or being in the extreme cold.
Oh, yeah.
As a child. Anything for monster trucks.
But those days you'll never forget, right?
Right.
Because we were all involved. Everybody would be talking to each other. I mean, you're here today, and I'm out of the business, it seems like right now, and now we're having this conversation. And I just hope that, the new drivers connect like we were able to connect with our fans.
I think that makes a difference between now and then, because to me, we made a friendship, let's say 10 years ago,
Right.
just because of where you were. And then we knew each other, and you get more time involved now. To me, you, per se, have retired from doing monster trucks, but you're part of our family.
Correct.
So you're still there.
Yeah, and it does. That's when you know you made an impact here and there, is that when you guys are still calling, and I can call you. When I go to Baltimore, I can go and have crabs and stuff like that, and you guys join me. So this is what it was all about back in those days. Not just being hardcore racing; it was about connections and experiences, and having pictures. Right? Last time I saw you, you brought me some pictures, and you're just a kid.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, man.
Of the pose.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to embarrass TJ and put those in the video.
Yeah, but now I can't walk upright, and you guys are making me feel young again. We're bringing out the old guns. So
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Every once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
So out of all the trucks you've driven, which one is your favorite?
Well, it's tough. Of course, I think I was born to be Superman. When that was brought out, it was like, well, this is a perfect fit. It was always one of my that was kind of like my favorite hero, anyways. And now they brought out this perfect truck, for me, and so I just felt like I owed it to kind of live the character. I remember when we had the fire suit made, and it was kind of hokey, and it was kind of like not what I wanted. It had some yellow in place and stuff, so I got to kind of help design that and really for a fire suit, because I knew from the very start what I wanted to do with it, and
You put your characteristics into it.
Even though they said, you're not really Superman, you're the driver of the race team or something like that, but in my head, I was Superman.
And to the fans you were too.
And I owed it to the fans to do that. And it's not that I'm trying to be an arrogant whatever, but this is an opportunity just to go out there and have fun and interact with the crowd and have them have fun.
Yeah.
And then, strike the pose and connect with everybody in that stadium. And then anybody else can go out there and have their fan favorites. So that was what was important to me at the time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh.
a little bit.
Okay, so whatever. That was one of them. But
Yeah.
But it took me, because it was a DC Comics sponsorship at the time, and Marvel was coming on with Captain America, And I didn't want to. I was happy in
Superman.
Superman, right? I'm like, no, I think this is going to be fine. I'm all right with this. But the reality was that sponsorship was leaving and Marvel was coming on strong. And they go, well, we want you to go into this Captain America. And we're going to get you a new truck. So Superman was an old high motor C-17 truck, and everybody else was getting these badass low motors,
Brand new things.
skating around turns like it was nothing. I'm getting my tail beat by everybody.
You're like, where's my new equipment?
Yeah. So they promised that a new sleek body style with a new bodybuilder, fiberglass guy that really made things nice and tight and seamless. So I'm like, all right, well, we can do this. I can play around with this. So having a new character, bringing out shields and turning a hat backwards and doing poses, it made it fun as well.
Right.
And then also Soldier Fortune. After that, because it was sponsorship, it went away, and that's where Soldier Fortune came out. Is that I wanted to kind of have a truck that couldn't go away, and that it was more grown up. It was a more grown up type thing. That it was a tribute to the real heroes,
Right.
the men and women who fight for the country and their families, and really try and pay some honor to that and highlight it. And if you guys went to the World Finals, we would have a whole compound, and it was just a call to all of our military family to hang out with us. We had wounded warriors there, and just chairs and seating and tents and military vehicles, and that was what was really special. So what was my favorite? They all are. I tried to make the best out of all of it and have fun with it and give tribute to our military folks as well.
Right. And since you brought that up, I think one of the best encores ever in Monster Jam was the military encore with every single division of the armed forces and everything.
Yeah, I have to say so too. Even though the Grave Digger 30th anniversary, that was pretty cool. But what is it on Veterans Day? They still throw out my tribute up. And what we did with the encore, which I thought went really well, and it's fun, and the double backflips, and with the soldiers, and then all the individual trucks that did it. I that was so fun and so honoring, and I'm glad that they still, and I hope they continue to keep playing that on Veterans Day and Memorial Days and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many reposts of people posting that video every year,
Yeah.
including myself,
Good.
of that video. I mean, that'll always stick in a lot of people's hearts, in my opinion.
Well, keep it up, too. Keep reposting it, because I think it's important, and I think, it brings us back to an age where we could kind of do that stuff.
For all the people out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and also, Captain America, I would say, was arguably one of your best seasons driving trucks in general. I mean, I saw a lot of freestyle wins and racing wins, and World Finals was really good for you as well.
Well, because it was a new truck.
Right.
And it was relatively new, and it hadn't
Which
been
is funny
worn
why
out.
you're talking about
that.
that.
It hadn't been worn out so bad either, so things were holding together. And again, with a new truck, you kind of get more confidence with it. It's not going to hurt you, and you can adjust it, and it was fast. So you're right. It had a great time with it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about something more of like on the fun side. Do you remember any fun stories from behind the scenes or with other drivers and crew members?
It all was fun. I mean, me being one of the old guys, and I can't believe I have to say it like that, but back in those days when it wasn't just a show in a box, and the teams weren't always together, and you guys know this too. So the Jimmy Kohlers, we'd be on separate. There wasn't the tours. We'd be on separate sides of the country, but would periodically meet up, with different drivers. So in the hotel lobbies, there would be like, "Oh, hey, Jimmy, good. I heard you're going to be here." So now you're hanging out with the guys now, and talking the old stories and laughing a little bit, and then going out to eat and hanging around, and those were the good old days, for real. Now they have things on where it's like a show in a box, and you stay with that tour. And when we were doing that, it was like, okay, the first week was fine, and then now you don't see anybody until it's showtime because everybody's in
Right.
the hotels and doing their own thing.
Right.
The older days when, and again, you had drivers. Tom Meents was driving his rig and his truck and fixing his own stuff a lot in the early days.
Which is pretty awesome.
And they would roll in, Jimmy Kohler, right? Everybody would roll in, and then as people are showing up, oh, hey, there's Jimmy, and there's Tom. Dennis is, where's Dennis at? And when the Anderson boys were younger, Adam and stuff like that, they'd come in and is brand new, not knowing a whole lot, and then stories, and you got to learn a lot of the characters and of the drivers. It was a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I heard there used to be like bonfires and all kinds of awesome barbecues and stuff.
Well, of course,
Lots of pounds.
the A shows, the big stadium shows, there still was a bit of like, hey, it's on TV, make sure you're there and look professional, and you get some rest. Of course, we were out and we were running around and having a good time.
You gotta.
But during summer shows, when you're doing the speedways and stuff like that, and then fans come out because we were there every year. Something's happened. There's the tailgates and the bonfires, and hey, we're gonna have a barbecue. Depending where you are, in Louisiana, somebody's throwing down crawfish, right? Having
Right.
crawfish boils and on the picnic table, and just having a big old time there. Or if we're in Texas, barbecue. California, another barbecue. Man, it was fun. It's like being in family. You're
Right.
traveling around, but you're seeing a whole new group of people that have been following us for years.
Right. Yep.
It was family, I would
Yeah.
say.
Oh,
Yeah.
Definitely.
A little
Yeah.
dysfunctional at times, but it works.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's some people that were on quads doing wheelies, and, things that
Yeah.
were free. I mean, who do they think we are, right? We're a bunch of motorheads.
Good old boys.
Everybody's good old boys. Yeah.
And girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big Bird.
So, when obviously you've gotten hurt a few too many times, but one of the most important ones was, I don't remember quite what show it was, but you were driving Superman and you basically floored it
Yeah.
and landed on your roof.
Yeah. Let's see if I can remember, because
That's a good one.
But I don't want to give. I mean, that was really, out of all the years, that was really the one that just shook me up the most. And there hasn't been a whole lot of these stuff because, again, they've been
Safety's a big-
great. The company has been great on keeping everybody safe in these things. But in that night, that was in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yep.
It had been raining, and in fact, it was Jimmy Kohler that went over the bus. And the thing is, it wasn't a bus; it was a box truck or a 53-foot van or something like that. But it was squared off. And so those things, you hit it, and if you didn't hit it hard enough, it would kick you back over the back wheels. Well, Jimmy had hit it, and then it did the same thing. It kicked it over, it hit hard, and then he just rode a wheelie all the way out. And I was going
Whoa.
after him. And I go, wow, man, that's cool. How am I going to, top
Replicate that or do it better.
Yeah, and I was relatively new anyways, right? In Superman, it was, again, you're not out there practicing every weekend. You're just kind of watching what's going out there, and your job is to do better than the guy that went before you.
Analyze and wing it.
Yeah. And so Jimmy had done that, and I'm like, okay, well, I got myself in that situation where I'm coming around, I hit the box truck, and it kicked the rear end, nosed over, and I just gassed it, but I gassed it hard enough where it literally missed the rear wheels and slid. Well, it was the first backflip
I would say I was
Let's-
Technical backflip.
Let's try to be positive about the thing.
Yeah.
But it missed, and it just kind of sheared the roof off of it, and I was a bit loopy in that whole situation. But actually, one of our good friends that was a tech official went in there and got me out of there.
Wow.
and then pulled me out and and actually helped me wave to everybody as I'm being dragged to the back. But again, in those situations, because we were so close to the fans, there was just an outpour of fan support and everything. I mean, I think I missed the next week, and then the week after that was the World Finals.
Wow.
Where saw a better positive thing where I ended up rolling over backwards and landing up on the nose. The first.
I was thinking about that one. Yep.
What is the first wheel stand?
The first nose wheelie moonwalk.
Nose wheelie, right? Except
The stoppie.
They don't
That's
get
it.
out now, and I got out and I was hanging off the side.
I
of that
couldn't
sucker.
believe that.
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up before. I'm glad you mentioned it. What did
Yeah.
it feel like up there?
Well, okay, we're gonna skip to that. So yeah, so that I mean, again, this World Finals and everything is the way it is. But I ended up in that situation where, and people were saying, some people were saying, when you got in there, why didn't you just gas it out and then keep going? Well, it was at the end of the run, anyways.
Right.
And when it did when it rolled over backwards like that and started to teeter, I just hit the brakes so it would stay. And because this was the picture right here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I go, oh,
That's the
hell,
yearbook cover.
yeah, this is the picture that I've been dying for, and as it sat there and was balancing, I just started getting off in there, and started to climb out, and I know that the tech officials, and the people upstairs with the walkie talkies are saying, no, don't do it. And I'm like, hell yes, I'm climbing.
Yeah.
And I did. I got up there, but people were yelling so hard. I was going to get all the way to the top of that sucker, kick the pose, and then I was going to retire for the rest. I didn't have to do anything after that. But whatever. It made for a great picture. World Finals. I mean,
That's all you have to say.
It was
2
on
words.
videos at that time. It was on pay-per-view or whatever, but it was cool. It was a cool experience.
Right. And that's one that people still look at today, especially super fans.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the top moments of Superman.
It happened just after the time expired, and if it was during regular season, some of the judges said you would have won the whole thing.
Wow.
But whatever. The more importantly is that the picture's out there, and I got to do that.
Yep.
Do you remember what year that was?
I don't.
It was in the 2000s.
Maybe it was 2008, 7, or something like that.
I think it was 8.
Maybe it was year. I mean, see, this is the Mazda truck brain. I can't think about years or days anymore.
And now every show is not exactly the same, but it's with the same people. You can't tell what week show it is because everyone's still together now.
Yeah.
And back then you kind of could a little bit because, oh, hey, you're going to see this new guy you haven't seen all year.
Yeah, exactly, right. And they would do this the whole show, and now I think you only get pieces of it, right? Little highlights here and there.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll do highlight reels.
I don't know. And for goodness sake, you never know who's driving it because it's from one whatever highlight film to another. Nobody's recognizing drivers anymore because it's too quick.
I know.
You're out there doing your thing, working hard, but pull off and now get somebody else out there. So it is what it is.
Right.
Get another question, Wayne?
Oh, well, I mean, since you're talking about it, wrestling, let's go back to that.
Okay.
So there were so many big athletes. So back in the 90s, what was the first year that you started and then retired? You remember?
All right, so 95, somewhere around there we went, football was 93, so it was about 94, I think I went to WCW and it was training. Learning all the ropes and doing little house shows and stuff like that, and then
Working your way up.
working my way up, and then but this was the Hulk Hogan years coming in, and it was tough to break in, even though I was basically contracted with WCW as one of the younger guys coming in, but it was tough to break in. So my best friend that I went to college with, he was already there, the son of Cowboy Bill Watts. So he said, well, let's just, give a shot at WWF at the time. And he and I went out to a tryout. Made that, and then they started the Techno Team 2000, which started out pretty slow, but there was a lot of excitement in the beginning of it for the company. But yeah, I mean, it was going through all that stuff, and talk about not being a wrestler, starting out and then going right out to the main events.
Right.
My first real big match was Madison Square Gardens.
Wow.
And, being scared to death out of my brain, but having a lot of fun doing it,
Absolutely. And the adrenaline, I'm sure, was
you're
pumping
out
during
there.
that one.
It was dark, and, there's a million people there, and they're all screaming at you. You can't see anybody because the spots are right on you.
Right.
But, again, you're just out there having a good time, trying to be a character, and just
on a good show.
loving it, yeah.
Yeah. What was your most memorable moment, like, out of every match? Or
Well, Bill Goldberg is one of my good friends. We played football together, did a couple All-Star games. We played in Japan Bowl, All-Star game back in the day. And then when he started wrestling, he was at WCW, and I helped train him and come up with some of the moves and stuff like that. Well, when he came out big, and a lot of it was, he was beating the heck out of everybody, but a lot of it was that the office didn't know really what to do with him. So they said, go out there and beat the hell out of these guys for 2 minutes. And he did that, and it looked cool, and the crowds got with him, and he turned into Bill Goldberg. Mm-hmm. And but during that streak, we did a show in Macon, Georgia, and Arn Anderson was the booker at that point. He says, "Hey, Chad, you're going to go over on Bill." And he goes, "How do you think he's going to take it?" And I'm like, "Bill's going to be fine with it." And we went out there, did a pretty decent match. It was dark. I don't think there's a video. Bill says he has the video if I wanted to ever see it. But, I went over on him on that one, pinned him with my finish, and, good. But nobody counted it because they wanted to promote his streak of undefeated. But when Bill was writing a book and he put a paragraph about, there's one guy that did beat me during that time, and it's Chad Fortune.
Wow.
So, and I still do podcasts about that.
Really?
Even, last year I did one like that. So
that's awesome.
Heads up to Bill on this, and thanks for the story, but, I always consider him one of my friends.
Good sportsmanship.
Yeah. But that's probably what my most famous, match was.
Right.
There's so many matches out there, so.
I know. And it's definitely a crazy industry, like you said. Once you get into it with all of these different matches, it's like every other one is your favorite because you have that big crowd just like you did with all the monster truck shows.
Yeah. It just keeps, you just keep going. It's part of the life, yeah.
So how'd you move from wrestling to monster
trucks? So I was with WCW at the time, and this is when, the Nitro and Raw were getting bigger and stuff like that. And I think there was a cooling off period where WCW and the management with Ted Turner's organization was just trying to phase out the wrestling. And they were trying to sell it off, and they were getting rid of some people and stuff like this. And at that time, the vice president or the president of the marketing department left and went to Pace Motorsports at the time, which was the beginnings of Monster Jam. And he approached me because when I was wrestling for WCW, me and another guy, Dale Torborg, were basically commissioned to be wrestling celebrity tire carriers for the WCW car. They had a Busch Series car, and we would be out in the middle of traffic carrying
That's
tires
awesome.
and stuff like that. So we would work with him, and then I did all the pay-per-view commercials for WCW at the time. I was doing a lot of training with some of the new wrestlers that were coming through. So I had worked with the marketing department a lot. But when he left and went to Pace Motorsports, he had called me up and said, "Oh yeah, so I see that you might be leaving that spotlight. Do you wanna how about come over here? You wanna ride a bull?" Because the company also was working with PBR, professional bull riding,
Wow.
or do you want to drive a motorcycle or drive a monster truck?
So you had
And
your
I'm like,
options.
I go, I don't know anything about anything, so whatever. And he goes, no, I'm just kidding. I go, why don't you come out and check out one of the shows, monster truck shows. They flew me from, I was living in Atlanta at the time, flew me to Minneapolis to see a show. I had a suite and, sitting around, went on a special tour of the pit party and sat in Tal Mentz's truck at the time because it was the only one that was really big enough for me to sit in. I saw the show, spent the first half racing and stuff like that in a suite, and I'm sitting here the whole time with my mouth open, go, what's going on? And then went down on the floor to watch freestyle in one of the tunnels.
Right.
Again, going, what the what? And at the time, I think during intermission, they had Demolition Derby in there at the same time.
I missed that.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And there was a couple cars because they couldn't get them off in time. They were, junked up and stuff like that. So we had to continue on with the show. They just left them out there. And Gravedigger came out last during freestyle and decided he was going to go do whatever in the world he wanted to, and was hitting these the Demolition Derby cars and everything else on the track. And I'm going,
What?
the crowd's going crazy. There's smoke and dust and, cracking up, car parts everywhere. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You want me to do what? and so after the show, I'm like, they're like, Chad, what did you think? And I'm like, yeah, whatever, great. That's
that's
I was
their
just
thing.
sitting there going, what in the world? So the next weekend, I was in Dennis Anderson's shop in North Carolina, and they're prepping one of the trucks for me, right? The Gravedigger, and they're pulling the body off, and they're welding in the seat, head measurements and stuff like this. I had a WCW fire suit because when I was doing tire carrier stuff, so I had the whole gimmick out. And he's like, well, I'm there and I'm watching this all take place, and I'm like, what'd you take? Why are you taking the body off? They go, well, so when you roll it,
You don't need
you don't break my $10,000 body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I look around and I go, what the hell you think is going to happen here? Roll what? What are you talking about? Roll it. And laugh. So they get me all fitted in this thing, and I'm in the bean field, and Dennis is out there. He had already prepped up some jumps. Like I said, they were like 6, 7, 8 feet, but really steep jumps. And we did a couple laps. He just kind of said, okay, this is the kind of deal. We'll do a couple laps, hit the jump the right way, the race lane.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just squirrely. It's all over the place,
Right.
And in those days, right, they leaned a lot and everything
Right.
was good. And, 2 speeds, fast and faster and power like crazy. And, I'm having a pretty good ball and stuff like this. The collar's falling off every time and I'm just lost or whatever. But then he goes, okay, now turn it around. We're going the opposite direction. And line up and, get about 10 foot from it and stop. Turns it all off. He goes, this is what I want you to do, okay? When you rev this sucker up, you can't hear anything. And he goes, rev this thing up. When I drop my hand, you just hammer it and you hit this backside and you'll just go up for this. And I'm like,
What?
I'm like, all right. And I remember I'm just like going, Jesus. And I go, this is going to be the end of me, right? And again, if you don't understand, back in those days, the Beard seat was basically like an old trucker seat with
Right.
cushion, and you're not really secure in it anyways.
Right.
You're
No.
bouncing around and you're flapping around. You have, a lap belt. This is before the aluminum seats, and you're ratcheted in there nice and tight, and you're not moving. You're moving with the suspension. So
You basically sit on a spring, put some rubber on the spring, and that's basically what your seat was.
pretty much
That
what
was
it
it back then?
Yeah, so I do that. So I'm listening. I'm watching him like crazy. I got this thing, revved up, and he drops his hand. I just basically close my eyes for a minute so I can just see the see the ramp, and it just goes boom. I see nothing but sky. I'm sitting there going, holy shit! And my eyes are going. I'm locked in here. I think the collar just flew off too. Every time somebody has to always come out and put it back on. And then it starts to come down, right? It's suspended animation as I'm climbing. Now it's time to come down. And Dennis was saying, then you feather it when you're there. So I'm going, wum, 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 and it starts to come down.
Praying to God.
And here's where the train wreck hits, right? So you hit, and then your head jacks back and hits, because I'm tall, my head hit all the way over the back of the seat to the Lexan. So I'm like, again, there's no Hans device, there's no neck. The neck collar flew out, in my mind already 10 minutes ago, and it's only been seconds.
Oh my God.
And so my head's like this, and then it snaps back over the seat and hits the back of the Lexan, makes a big noise. But I don't know it because everything's so fast and happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and then now I'm, sucked it up. It went boom, whatever. And I'm like, and you come back and go and line up again. To the same thing, And then I think at the same time, at that time, Dennis is laughing at me or something like this. Oh no, he didn't laugh, because at that time, I go around and I see him and Dennis, and I go, and that's when he starts laughing. And he goes,
That's good.
He's like, what? And I'm like, what? And
And he does it every weekend.
he did it every time. But also he made those ramps bigger.
On purpose, probably.
On purpose, because one, I was coming in, like, if you ever listen to Dennis talking to any kind of these new guys back in the old days, this was his house. This was his sport. He's built this stuff. And me coming out of wrestling, he wanted to make sure that I left with the understanding that this was this was not easy. This was something, and if I'm going to come in, that I'm going to earn a position in a truck.
Right.
Because, again, truck drivers, crew guys that worked on these things basically for free, working all their lives and never get an opportunity.
Right.
And here I come out of nowhere, and there's now, have a crowd of people building, basically revamping a Gravedigger for a weekend. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I hit this damn ramp till I wore it out. And I think that night it was February in Carolina, and I went to the ocean because the hotel was right there. I went and got in the water and had the waves crashing on me because I was so freaking sore. And Mike Wales, who kind of was there with me, we went to dinner and we would talk, and he'd turn over like this. I'd hold my hand up just because my neck was so whiplashed.
Wow.
But my adrenaline rush was so good. It lasted me for like the whole weekend. Mm-hmm. And it was, again, that was the first and only time I actually didn't do it in front of a crowd. I did it in a bean field, and I must have done well enough to where I got a ride, and the next season I had my own truck. Well, there's the NWO truck, which you guys, again, you don't realize. But I was a spokesman for the NWO because the truck, I didn't fit in anything, so they were building it at the time. So
that's a good
that's
story.
A story. Yeah.
That's
and
a
I
good
have
one.
pictures of that first hit.
Do you?
I do have a picture of it. One posing with the WCW outfit on a tire of the Gravedigger without a body shell on it, and then that first jump where you visually, you could see it was up there pretty good.
That's
for
wild.
Those days, a coilover.
Oh
truck.
yeah, single coilover too, right?
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, no safe. It was.
What a man.
It was. I may be exaggerating, but it was my first time, and it was just freaking.
I don't think you're exaggerating.
First hit in any monster truck.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to do the Dennis Anderson thing.
And there had been like B. Winston, I think, when he did his first tryout, it knocked him out. One of the things, because it whiplashed so much that it knocked him out, and he veered off into the woods in that same thing. So.
Oh my gosh.
So there.
Wow.
Did they have the RII thing back then too? They shut you off?
They did. I want to say they did.
Pre-
Because at a certain point we were simulating being in a arena, and so there were these oil drums, around in the bean field that simulated. Okay, if you hit the oil drum, then that means you hit the wall in the arena. So you got to make sure you're under control. I hit every one of those suckers. I'd hit something and be gassing this thing. I'd be all over the place. Boom, hit the thing, keep going, hit another one, and they're like, "God damn!" Dennis is mad that these are my oil drums. I still use these, or they were fuel drums or something like this. But again, these are stories, right? I get to tell them 20 years later the real life of how it was.
The real adventures of fortune.
Right. The misfortune of
The misfortune of fortune.
yeah.
The best seller in the industry.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And Dennis now has that ride experience, the King Sling Monster
Yeah,
Truck.
how cool is that, right?
Amazing.
One thing too is that as good of a driver as Dennis Anderson is, to be strapped into a truck with him, you really probably get to see, the throttle rhythm, the same thing that
Right.
the kids have.
Yep.
But I don't know if there was very many people that could ever mimic his throttle rhythm on this stuff, and to be
No.
if you've done it,
Adam Ryan's pretty close.
if you've ridden with him, you probably got more guts than what I would never get in the thing with him.
I think it'd be cool to you to do that.
Yeah, I think you should.
That would
At least
be
try it
really
once.
cool.
Well, but again, you watch him drive King Sling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've all done that. We've
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah, but also watching him drive his King Sling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mega
And,
truck.
just amazing. Just I don't understand. He certainly is a legend and
Absolutely.
a good friend that I haven't kept in touch with, but to be able to ride in that stuff with a guy of that caliber is
I think it's funny watching his head just
Yeah,
bounce
so-
back and forth.
Yeah, so
'cause
his head till this day bounces back and forth.
he
Yeah.
doesn't wear the Hans like everyone wears now.
Yeah.
Where they have the strap on.
Well,
he wears the ones with the
he
shorts.
always had an issue with like claustrophobia stuff, so he didn't even want to wear a face mask. And then to put him in a Hans device, I know at the World Finals when the kids were all out there and they're testing him up, and he couldn't move, and it would just freak him out. Or if he was upside down in the truck
Yep.
without that stuff, he'd be freaking out all the damn time.
Oh.
But I mean, Dennis is Dennis. I don't know. I mean, if he's scared of a mouse, what does that matter when you can jump over a building the way he's been doing
Yep.
it for so long?
Right. Yeah.
Amazing.
Another incredible career.
Just amazing. Yeah.
So the other question, I would say, is you went from your job for driving monster trucks to working in the office at Bonta Jam. Then what?
Well, I was doing it. I was also working in the office as I was driving trucks, and the reason for that is playing football. You're great. You're making a lot of money. You're part of this stuff, and then in one day, because due to injury, you're done looking for a job.
Right.
Same sort of thing happened in wrestling too, right? You can go out there and be a star and run around in your underwear and be all this stuff, and then something happens, you're looking for a job.
Right. One
So-
big injury.
When presented with the monster trucks, I said, yeah, this would be great, but I need, my plan B or a plan A, whatever this is, that I'll drive the trucks, but I also need to be part of the team in the office. And thankfully they did do that. So when we started going international with trucks, taking them out of the swamps and out of the U.S. stadiums, we brought it international and did our tours in Europe. And I handled all the logistics for the trucks going from start, putting them into, not me personally doing it, but arranging the
Right.
containers of trucks and the tours going over to Europe, and then later on going into Australia and Asia and everywhere, South America, and the challenges of all that. So
Right.
I got to do the real world experiences of driving, doing PR. I'm there already, and then doing logistics of getting everything out, which again, you couldn't drive a truck all my life, so it just progressively moved right into international transportation with Feld Entertainment, and then now after it's all over, I've moved on from that, and now doing it with all entertainment. So we've got circuses and stage acts and all kinds of stuff. So,
Right.
So I'm still part of it in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all family sports, so
Yeah.
just like monster trucks
Yeah.
and everybody has
Yeah.
evolved into.
Yeah.
Whereas it used to be characters and some interesting types
Yeah.
of scenarios.
Yeah. It's crazy, how one thing leads to another, and keeping it, a good positive and always trying to move forward. It will work out. If you want to think about it that way, it will work out if you just keep with it. And if it's a passion of yours, it works out.
Right.
Yeah.
How was the experience overseas at any shows that you got to drive?
Well, yeah, all of them. I mean, because I was doing the logistics of it too. I was on all of the events.
Mm-hmm.
So, going into a new country or a new arena somewhere that, hasn't had any experience with these trucks, people don't know how to act. We've grown up with this type of stuff, and seeing them at the fairs and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you bring a monster truck that's an American sport, and I remember being in Belgium, and people are just staring, not even reacting, and it was really neat to watch them. We literally had to get out of the trucks at the end of them and take a bow, so that they go, "What? Okay, it's over now," and oh my gosh, we really appreciate you, and it kind of exploded that way. But they caught on pretty quick about,
Right.
Wow, all right, now it's yeah, because we had to teach them it's all right. It's scream and yell and lose your mind. When a truck comes rolling into a stadium or an arena, you feel it through your whole chest, right?
Right.
You feel it, the music's going, and I've been some of the best shows in the world has been in those days of them learning
Right.
this sport and this event, and it's the coolest thing in the world. And then afterwards, again the same format, we're signing autographs, and foreign languages, trying to figure it out, but you see the excitement in this,
Right.
and it was good. It was equally as exciting for us.
That's
as
incredible.
drivers. Yeah.
That's good.
So Tom Katz talked a lot this
I
episode.
have, yes.
So I won't ask you for a Catch Me Out question this
Okay.
time. All right.
Gotcha.
So for everyone that watches and for the fans, what is for our last conversation this episode? What would be your last words that you want to say to everyone out there?
What would I say is the last, my legacy as a monster truck driver? So it's hard to tell exactly what it was. There's a lot of hardcore racing out there, hardcore everything. The Dennis Andersons, when I first started, although I consider him a mentor and a really good friend, but when I first started, I said I wanted to kind of make, hey, let's do this. Why don't we play around a little bit with this? And he said, no, I'm a good guy in a bad truck, and that was his deal. And there was no
Right.
way of doing this. And here I was coming out of an entertainment type of field, right? I mean, the transition I had to make out of football, I knew where he was coming from because I was a hardcore football player, and having to go into wrestling, that was just kind of like a jokey kind of like entertainment. And I kind of recognized the power of some of the entertainment, and I wanted to bring this to, which is really kind of how I was even introduced into this. Like, let's see where we can go with Chad and a little bit of entertainment. Well, Dennis wasn't going to have it, and a lot of the old school drivers and truck guys weren't either. Their business is hardcore. We're out there to have the best and baddest motors and rock and roll this thing, and this is what we want to do. So me coming in from this, it was tough, and I had to prove myself as one, being a guy that would, be there when there's people working on trucks and help out as much as I can, and then prove myself as a driver and as a person that, so I think it was tough in the beginning. But I also wanted to impose and try and to add the element of entertainment and interact with the crowds. So over my career, there's been, I'm sure there's always been mixed reviews on my performances here and there. There's been a lot of great feedback, but also I always wanted to kind of earn the respect of the drivers and the hardcore guys. So again, I don't know what my legacy is. I just hope that I made people happy with some of the characters and the fun things that we were able to do, as well as some of the cool freestyles and racing and the motorsport stuff. So I don't know. I hope so. I had a blast. Met a million people, and people that I still keep in contact with today, and that's what's most important.
Yeah.
Overall, that's what's the biggest thing, is the impact of the kids now that are bringing their own sons that were that age, and then telling stories about, wow, man, I remember Superman and Captain America and this guy you don't even remember. It was pretty cool and pretty special.
Yeah. I think at least if one thing that you left for everybody is that
Soldier Fortune. He left Soldier
well,
Fortune.
he did indeed leave that Soldier
Yeah.
Fortune, but to have passion and charisma with everything. If nothing else, if that's what you think, I would think at least if kids watch all the performances and see the character that you put on and the great person you were in the pit parties, to at least be charismatic and have good energy, with
Yeah.
that, whatever you want to go into, be bold about it and do your best.
Yeah, I hope so. And like any of the young drivers too, anybody that was new that was breaking in before I was leaving, or even today, that's what I always wanted to tell them too, is that it can be serious, and this is competition all the way through, but remember to have fun so that the crowd can have fun. When we talked about this before, is that you and I we can race all our hearts out in our backyards, but nobody wants to buy a ticket for that. When we can go out there and play and have characters and have other people laugh and have fun and just have a memory, having Dennis and Tom do something cool, wow, did you see the backflip? Did you see how this is? And did you see that? And then, oh man, and that one guy in that Superman suit did a pose in the middle of a freaking fire pile. That was pretty neat. So that's what I want to be able to do, is a little bit something different and show a little bit of fun, entertainment, and connection. That's really what I cared about when I was driving.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think my final question to you will be, before we wrap up, for any future people wanting to be a monster truck driver, or wanting to be a crew chief or an engineer, or on the wrestling case, wanting to be a wrestler or be a person in the booth behind the scenes or an announcer, what would you say to them? Like, any advice or anything that you should do to achieve your goal,
Well, I will tell you this, is that in all of my experience, and the way is it's passion too. It's if you really, really want to. I mean, some people just say that they want to until it's they have to work for it. And nothing comes free. You have got to put in the hours, and you got to be able to say, yeah, I'm going to sweep floors and do stuff and have people, rank you and do all this stuff. If you can make it past that kind of stuff, and the time and the experience of doing it, you will get what you want. And I think that's true in anything you want to. Have a decent attitude, not get butthurt about everything that, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting that. If you can make it through that, you will get it. And then once you do hit that kind of level, things start to gravitate to you a little bit more, because you get more experience with it. People know that you're a decent person, and then they want to work with you. So as a monster truck driver, the Anderson boys, they brought something special in each one. I saw it happen. I saw when Adam was doing cross-threadings out of nowhere. Dennis did it, but mostly on accident. We wanted to hit everything straight, and then Adam came off and started doing things cross-threaded, and it just changed, a lot of the industry. And what Adam's doing, and some of the younger kids that doing the stoppies and stuff like that. That's all cool, but also put some element of interest in there so that when you take the helmet off, they want to know that that's a real human being with a personality and not
Right.
a robot, that, doesn't want to go out there and talk to people.
Right.
So it's a full bore thing. Yeah.
Well, Chad, it was a great time. We had a blast. TJ, second ever episode, and great to have with you instead of everybody else. To have with Chad Fortune.
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you. You guys are on the right path here. I'm glad you guys are out there doing this, and I hope you get all the drivers that you want and other people too, right?
Right.
Other fans. So I'm proud of you guys for doing this.
Thank you. Doing it.
Do it.
One more question. In all your years of driving a monster truck, the biggest fan that you ever met?
Are you trying to put a? Are you trying to?
Yeah.
Well-
You remember back in the day because it's been a long road.
He's not going to say
There has to be-
Tomcat.
Well,
No, I mean, so the other thought we like to figure out
Oh,
is
yeah.
being able to nominate like two fans that the drivers know about, that we talk about,
yeah.
and being able to honor them like Montjam does for the.
So like a Hall of Fame for fans. Basically.
Yeah. Well, Tom, of course. I mean, you've been around a long time.
Yes.
You really have. You've been one of my actually biggest fans when, I didn't know what the heck I was doing half the time, but it really was. But, and you may say this too, Big Joe, who is another guy that rallied everybody, right?
Yep.
Fans, and I mean, you guys would all meet up together, and you could see him coming. Oh hell, let's hold on a second, and we got to give Joe and everybody and yourself even, because you're a part of it all too. You got to have your time, and we're going to talk a little bit, and everybody's going to be on hold.
Everyone's going to be mad because we're sitting there talking.
Yeah.
And then of course you're going out to dinner with him.
Going out to
Multiple
dinner,
places
yeah, yeah. And that was a ploy too, right? You didn't do that so much, but Joe would want more time with you. So hey, come on, we're going to dinner, and just go. You didn't have a choice; you
Right.
just would do it.
Yep.
That's great. Also, too, but when we talk about the fans, it was the younger guys. You guys that when you were so young, you didn't know any damn different other than there's a dinosaur. There's the guy that's wrangling up the dinosaurs, and you just,
Driving around.
we'd throw you around and pick you up and do the pictures and like I said, the last time I saw you, which is I don't know, a couple months ago, and you're bringing out this little bit of nostalgia, and when we're gone, you'll still have that,
Yeah.
and that's pretty important. That if you still care about anybody, and again, drivers today have to strive for that too. It's not what you're doing now. It's what legacies you're going to bring in and what you can teach to others.
To me, Joe was an awesome person, and unfortunately passed away last year. And he brought
think it's almost 2
happiness
years now.
to you. I mean, he just the jokes he would come up with, he would leave you stitching. It
Yeah.
was awesome. Yeah.
But also from afar,
Yes.
and it was comforting. It was comforting when you, Joe, and some certain other people, because it was like you traveled for a while, we traveled in,
Yep.
and it was like, good.
Dare to fall Elysium, descend upon her palace of paradise. Elysium, the fields await you. Enter the after.